Picture this. The Grand Canal, autumn night, 610 CE. You're a local magistrate, summoned to present tribute to the Emperor's floating palace. The dragon boat stretches 300 feet, its decks glowing with 10,000 lanterns. The air carries silk perfume, roasted meat, and something else, the muffled sounds of crying. As you board, you notice the guards' eyes, dead, exhausted, they've seen too much. Through paper screens, shadows move in ways that make you avert your gaze. Women's voices, some laughing with forced gaiety, others pleading. A eunuch leads you deeper into the vessel, past chambers where silk curtains can't quite hide what's happening inside. Then you see him. Emperor Yang sits on a throne made from a single jade block, worth more than your entire province. He's 39 but looks older, bloated from wine, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights of pleasure. Surrounding him, women, hundreds of them, some barely 13, some clearly noble-born, their aristocratic features twisted in carefully maintained smiles. The emperor notices you. "Magistrate," he slurs, "I hear your county has beautiful daughters. Virgins, I hope?" Your blood freezes, because you know what happens to regions that don't supply adequate tribute. You've heard about Shandong, where he had every family with unmarried daughters burned alive for hiding beauty from their emperor. This floating palace glides on a canal built with the bones of 1,000,000 peasants. This emperor has turned the Middle Kingdom into his personal brothel, and tonight you must decide, sacrifice your daughter or watch your county burn. Welcome to the Hollow Throne. I'm your host, and today we explore how one man's sexual obsession destroyed China's shortest major dynasty and killed millions in the process. Content warning and thesis. This episode contains explicit discussions of systematic sexual slavery, mass rape, forced prostitution, and the weaponization of sexuality as imperial policy. We'll examine historical accounts of virgin tributes, noble women forced into harems, and the construction of pleasure complexes built on mass graves. This content is extremely disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Emperor Yang of Sui ruled China from 604 to 608 CE, just 14 years. But in that time he managed something almost incomprehensible. He destroyed one of China's most promising dynasties through sexual excess so extreme that it triggered nationwide rebellion. This isn't just another story of a lustful ruler. This is about how sexual obsession became state policy, how imperial desire reshaped geography itself, and how one man's appetites could literally kill millions. The Chinese historical records, the Book of Sui, Ziji Tongzhen, and Tang dynasty accounts document behaviors that challenge comprehension, building a 1,000-mile canal primarily to transport virgin girls, creating floating cities dedicated to orgies while peasants starved, forcing entire noble families into sexual servitude. These aren't exaggerations by political enemies, they're corroborated by multiple sources, archaeological evidence and the empire's rapid collapse. What makes Yang's story essential is that it demonstrates how sexual pathology, when combined with absolute power and massive resources, can destroy even the strongest civilization. The Sui had reunified China after 3 centuries of division. They should have lasted generations. Instead, Yang's sexual obsessions triggered the bloodiest civil war in human history up to that point, the Second Sun's Shadow. Picture this. The Sui Palace, 580 CE. 11-year-old Yang Guang watches his older brother Yang Yong receive the crown prince ceremony. Thousands bow to his brother while Yang Guang stands in the shadows. Second son, spare heir, forgotten. But Yang Guang is watching, learning. He sees his brother's weakness. Yong loves one woman, his wife. He sees his parents' vulnerability. They value Confucian virtue. So Yang Guang begins performing virtue while secretly cultivating vice. The historical records describe young Yang Guang as beautiful as jade, clever as a fox. But beneath the surface, something darker grew. Palace eunuchs later testified that the young prince would torture palace cats, particularly females, inserting objects into them to watch them die slowly. A fascination with penetrative violence that would define his reign. Dr. Leonard Xu, who studied Chinese imperial psychology, notes, Yang Guang represents a particular type of psychopath, the calculating manipulator who learns to perform morality while harboring extreme appetites. His childhood wasn't traumatic, it was entitled. He didn't become a monster through suffering, but through the belief that everything, including people's bodies, existed for his pleasure. The perfect deception. For 20 years, Yang Guang played the perfect prince. When his parents visited, he'd hide his concubines and display only his primary wife. He'd wear simple clothes, eat vegetarian meals, quote Confucian texts. Meanwhile, his older brother lived openly with multiple women, earning their father's disapproval. The Book of Sui records the moment everything changed. In 600 CE, Yang Guang orchestrated whispers that his brother was planning rebellion. False evidence was planted. Their father, Emperor Wen, paranoid in his old age, believed it. Yang Yong was arrested, stripped of his title. Yang Guang became crown prince. But Yang Guang wasn't done. In 604 CE, Emperor Wen fell mysteriously ill. The official history claims natural causes, but palace sources suggest poison. As his father lay dying, Yang Guang couldn't wait. He raped his father's favorite concubine, Lady Chen, in the adjacent room while Emperor Wen could hear her screams. The dying emperor tried to change succession, but it was too late. Yang Guang's men controlled the palace. Within hours of his father's death, Yang Guang had executed his brother and 4 other princes. The mask was off. The first 100 days, August 604 CE. Yang Guang becomes emperor, Yang of Sui. His first acts reveal the monster beneath the mask. He orders all his father's concubines, except Lady Chen, whom he keeps for himself, to commit suicide to honor the late emperor. Over 2,000 women die in a single day. But that's just the beginning. He orders every beautiful woman in the capital, regardless of marital status, to be registered for potential palace service. The Book of Sui records, husbands wept in the streets as officials took census of their wives' beauty. Fathers hid daughters in cellars. Some families fled the capital rather than risk catching the emperor's eye. Within his first 100 days, Emperor Yang had assembled a harem of over 3,000 women. But quantity wasn't enough. He wanted variety, novelty, the exotic. He established the Office of Beautiful Women, a bureaucracy dedicated solely to finding, training and rotating sexual partners for the emperor. The Virgin Tribute System. By 605 CE, Emperor Yang institutionalized sexual exploitation into state policy. Every prefecture had to provide annual virgin tribute, the most beautiful unmarried girls between 13 and 16. Failure meant the local magistrate's execution and his wife and daughters joining the tribute. The Tang historian Liu Shu writes, "Villages would marry off girls as young as 7 to save them from tribute. Some parents deliberately scarred their daughters' faces. The wealthy bribed officials to take peasant girls instead. The empire became a hunting ground." But Emperor Yang's system went beyond simple collection. He created an elaborate examination process. Girls were inspected naked by eunuchs and female officials. Their virginity was verified. They were ranked by beauty, taught sexual techniques and sorted into categories: virgins for deflowering, skilled courtesans for pleasure, and breeders deemed suitable for producing imperial children. The numbers are staggering. Historical records indicate that by 610 CE, the imperial harem contained over 100,000 women. Not all were concubines, many were servants, entertainers, or craftswomen, but all were available to the emperor's desires. The logistics alone required thousands of eunuchs and massive resources. The labyrinth of lust. Picture this: Lu Huaiyang, 607 CE. Emperor Yang orders construction of the Western Garden, CU, a 16-square-mile pleasure complex. But this isn't just a garden, it's a city-sized brothel, designed as a sexual wonderland. The Ziji Tongjian describes it in disturbing detail. 16 artificial lakes connected by marble channels, where naked palace women swam like fish for the emperor's amusement. Hundreds of pavilions, each themed for different sexual experiences: the Pavilion of Virgin Tears, the Hall of Submission, the Tower of Heavenly Moans. At the center lay the Labyrinth of Lust, a massive maze where Emperor Yang would hunt naked women like prey. The rules were simple. If he caught them, he raped them. If they evaded him until dawn, they earned freedom. Few did. The architect, He Cho, designed dead ends that looked like escapes, hidden rooms with one entrance, false exits that led back to the center. But here's what made it truly horrific. Emperor Yang made it a spectator sport. He'd invite ministers and foreign ambassadors to watch from elevated platforms as he pursued screaming women through the maze. Refusing to attend meant suspected disloyalty. Showing disgust meant death. The garden contained wine pools, large enough for boats, surrounded by meat forests, trees with cooked meat hanging from branches. Naked women served as living furniture: tables, chairs, lampstands. The emperor would host state banquets where officials discussed tax policy, while women copulated around them as entertainment. Dr. Wang Meiling's analysis of imperial excess notes. The Western Garden represented the complete breakdown of boundaries between public and private, sacred and profane. By forcing his court to participate in his sexual theater, Yang made the entire government complicit in his depravity. The Grand Canal of Flesh. In 605 CE, Emperor Yang announced his greatest project, the Grand Canal, linking northern and southern China. The official reason: economic integration. The real reason, revealed in palace records: a highway for transporting virgin tribute and accessing fresh hunting grounds for women. 3 million peasants were conscripted. The deadline: 3 years. The human cost was catastrophic. Workers who collapsed were buried alive in the embankments. Families who failed to meet quotas were executed. Conservative estimates put deaths at over 2 million, making it the deadliest construction project in human history. But the canal's completion in 6B8 CE revealed its true purpose. Emperor Yang launched his dragon fleet, 5,000 vessels including his 4-story imperial barge containing 120 rooms. The fleet required 80,000 pullers walking along the banks, 50,000 soldiers, and carried 100,000 courtiers, concubines and servants. The Book of Sui records the fleet's maiden voyage. Every prefecture along the route was required to provide virgins for the emperor's nightly pleasure. Local officials competed to offer the most beautiful girls. Those who pleased him received promotions. Those whose tributes disappointed were castrated and made to serve in the fleet's brothel barges. Picture this scene from 609 CE. You're a minor official in Yangzhou, watching the dragon fleet approach. The emperor's barge alone stretches 300 feet. Inside, witnesses report pools filled with wine and naked women, mechanical beds that move in rhythm, mirrors on every surface so the emperor can watch himself from all angles. Your daughter was taken yesterday, selected for the honor of imperial service. You'll never see her again. If she's lucky, she'll become a low-ranking concubine. If not, she'll be used once and discarded to the soldiers' brothels. But you smile and bow as the fleet passes because the alternative is your entire family's execution. The Goryeo Horror, 612 CE. Emperor Yang decides to invade the Korean kingdom of Goguryeo. The official reason, expanding the empire. The real reason, according to palace sources, he'd heard Korean women were tight as jade rings and wanted to verify personally. He mobilized 1.13 million soldiers, the largest army in human history at that time. But this wasn't just a military campaign, it was a rape expedition. Emperor Yang issued the Comfort Directive. Every unit must capture women for troop morale. Korean women would be sorted, the most beautiful for the emperor, the rest distributed by rank. The invasion was a disaster. The Koreans, fighting for their homeland and families, resisted fanatically. At the siege of Pyongyang, Korean women threw themselves from the walls rather than be captured. The Korean general Yulji Mundeok used the Sui army's rape pillaging against them, leaving bait villages with a few women to draw units into ambushes. The Ziji Tongjian records Emperor Yang's response to military setbacks. He had his own generals' wives brought to the front lines and raped them in view of their husbands to inspire more aggressive tactics. When General Yu Zhongwen suggested retreat, Yang had him castrated and made him watch as his daughters were given to the soldiers. At the Battle of Salsu River, the Koreans destroyed the Sui army. Of 305,000 soldiers who crossed the river, only 2,700 returned. Emperor Yang's response: execute the survivors for failing to bring back Korean women, and immediately prepare another invasion. He would invade Korea 3 times, 612, 6113, 614 CE, each campaign more disastrous. Combined casualties over 2 million. The empire's treasury emptied, the army destroyed, all for Emperor Yang's sexual obsessions. The noble women purge. By 615 CE, Emperor Yang had consumed most common-born beauties. He turned to the nobility. The treason of beauty law made it illegal for nobles to hide beautiful women from imperial service. Having an attractive wife or daughter without offering them to the emperor became treason. The Book of Sui records the case of Minister Zhang Hen. His wife Lady Liu was renowned for her beauty and poetry. The emperor demanded her presence. Zhang Hen refused, citing Confucian marriage principles. The emperor had Zhang Hen slowly dismembered over 5 days, forcing Lady Liu to watch. On the 5th day, as her husband died, she was taken to the imperial bed. Emperor Yang created special honor banquets where he'd invite noble families, then publicly rape the wives while husbands watched. Resistance meant execution. Showing emotion meant execution. The Tang historian Du Yu writes, ministers would drug their wives before banquets hoping unconsciousness would spare them memory. Some nobles poisoned their own daughters rather than see them defiled. But Emperor Yang's cruelest innovation was the family unity policy. If he desired a woman, her entire female line, mothers, sisters, daughters, must also serve. The logic, beauty runs in bloodlines, why waste it? 3-generation harems became common, with grandmothers, mothers and granddaughters serving simultaneously. The Jiangdu descent. By 6516 CE, rebellions erupted nationwide. Peasants who'd lost daughters to tribute, soldiers who'd survived Korea, nobles who'd been humiliated, all united against the emperor. Yang's response? Retreat to Jiangdu, modern Yangzhou, and accelerate his debauchery. The Ziji Tongjian describes his final years. Knowing his time was limited, the emperor indulged without restraint. He had virgins brought in groups of 100, deflowering them in sequence, competing with himself to break his previous records. Palace women who became pregnant were cut open to examine the fetuses, which he believed would reveal his fortune. In Jiangdu, he would orchestrate massive orgies, watching infinite reflections of bodies. He believed that seeing himself copulate from every angle would grant immortality. The accounts become increasingly deranged. He had women painted gold and silver, calling them living statues. He created human furniture by having women surgically modified to serve as chairs and tables. He ordered physicians to keep women alive but paralyzed so they couldn't resist but could feel everything. Meanwhile, the empire burned. 18 separate rebel armies converged on the capital. The treasury was empty. Cannibalism broke out in besieged cities. Provincial governors declared independence. The Sui dynasty, which had reunified China after 300 years of division, was collapsing after just 37 years. But Emperor Yang wouldn't acknowledge reality. When General Sima Deccan reported that rebels controlled most of the empire, Yang had him executed for ruining the mood and ordered the general's wife to dance naked on his corpse. The Yuan brothers' revenge. March 618 CE. The Yuan brothers, Huaji and Jiji, leaders of the palace guard, decide enough is enough. Their sister had been one of Emperor Yang's victims, used and discarded. They begin recruiting conspirators, finding eager participants among guards who'd been forced to enable atrocities for years. The plot was simple. Isolate the emperor, eliminate loyalists, end the nightmare. On the night of April 10, 618 CE, they struck. Guards sealed the palace. Eunuchs were slaughtered. The emperor's favorites were dragged from their beds and executed. Emperor Yang tried to flee through his network of secret passages, but the guards knew them all. They'd helped build them. He offered bribes, titles, women. The guards laughed. He invoked the mandate of heaven. They spat at his feet. Death by silk. The Yuan brothers gave Emperor Yang a choice: suicide by poison or strangulation. He chose strangulation, believing his body must remain whole for the afterlife. As the silk scarf tightened around his throat, Yuan Huaji reportedly whispered, "This is for every woman you destroyed." Emperor Yang died April 11, 1618 CE, age 49. His last words, according to witnesses, "I gave them pleasure beyond imagining." He died believing his atrocities were gifts. The palace women's reactions revealed the depth of trauma. Some laughed hysterically. Some stood frozen, unable to comprehend freedom. Some committed suicide, too broken to continue. The Yuan brothers found over 30,000 women in the Jiangdu palace complex alone. Most didn't even know the emperor was dead. They were told it was another elaborate game. The body count. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. 2 to 3 million dead building the Grand Canal, 2 million dead in Korean campaigns, 500,000 executed for various crimes, unknown hundreds of thousands of women who died from rape, suicide or murder, millions more from famine and civil war. Conservative estimates put the death toll of Emperor Yang's 14-year reign at 8 to 10 million, in a population of 50 million. 1 in 5 Chinese died because of his rule. Modern archaeology confirms the historical accounts. Mass graves along the Grand Canal contain hundreds of thousands of skeletons. Analysis shows malnutrition, untreated injuries, and evidence of being buried alive. At palace sites, archaeologists find underground chambers filled with female skeletons, many showing signs of violence. The Tang dynasty's response. The Tang dynasty, which succeeded the Sui, learned from Yang's atrocities. They instituted strict limits on imperial harems, theoretical maximum of 3,000. They created the Office of Censors to monitor imperial behavior. They made excessive sexual indulgence grounds for declaring an emperor unfit. But the trauma lingered for generations. The Tang poet Bai Jui wrote, "Mothers still frighten daughters with Emperor Yang's name. Young brides wake screaming from dreams of dragon boats. The Grand Canal flows red in memory. Built with blood, sailed with tears." Emperor Yang became Chinese culture's ultimate cautionary tale. The phrase Yang Guang's boats became synonymous with destructive excess. Literature, opera, and later film depicted him as the archetype of the lustful tyrant. But this cultural memory also served to normalize lesser abuses. As long as rulers weren't as bad as Emperor Yang, they seemed acceptable. The patterns of sexual tyranny. Dr. Sarah Chen's research identifies Yang patterns that recur throughout history. Institutionalization of sexual violence through bureaucracy. Using infrastructure projects to facilitate sexual predation. Making elite complicity mandatory for survival. Escalating excess as power becomes threatened. We see these patterns in Caligula and Nero's Rome. The Khmer Rouge's forced marriages. ISIS's systematic sex slavery. The comfort women system of imperial Japan. Modern human trafficking often follows Emperor Yang's blueprint. Official complicity, bureaucratic structures, industrial scale. The technology changes, but the patterns remain. When authorities become predators, when systems designed to protect become tools of exploitation, we see Emperor Yang's ghost. Lessons for modern power, Professor Lu Wei observes. Emperor Yang succeeded initially because he understood performance. For 20 years as prince, he performed virtue perfectly. Modern politicians who perform morality while hiding depravity follow his playbook. The lesson isn't to trust performance but to demand transparency. The Sui collapse also demonstrates how sexual violence as policy ultimately destroys the perpetrator. Emperor Yang thought rape would demonstrate power. Instead, it united enemies against him. Every family with a violated daughter became rebels. Sexual terrorism created the very forces that destroyed him. Perhaps most importantly, Emperor Yang's reign shows the cost of institutional compliance. Thousands of officials enabled his system, collecting tributes, managing harems, organizing rape campaigns. They told themselves they were following orders, maintaining stability, protecting their families. Their compliance made industrial-scale atrocity possible. The numbers that haunt. Let's return to the numbers, because they matter. 100,000 women in imperial harems, 2 million dead building his pleasure highway, 8 to 10 million total deaths, 14 years to destroy a dynasty, one man's appetites causing it all. The Grand Canal still exists. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists take photos. Cargo ships carry goods. Few remember it was built as a highway for transporting sex slaves, that its foundations contain the bones of millions. This historical examination disturbed you. It should. When we forget that systems can be weaponized for sexual violence, when we ignore how bureaucracy can enable atrocity, we risk repetition. Subscribe to the Hollow Throne for more unflinching examinations of history's darkest chapters. Hit the notification bell. Share this video. These stories matter because the patterns persist. Final reflection. Emperor Yang of Sui ruled for just 14 years. In that time, he transformed China from a reunified empire into a charnel house. He turned government into a rape machine. He made the Middle Kingdom into his personal brothel. And he did it all legally, officially, systematically. The Chinese historian Sima Guang wrote the epitaph that should haunt us. Emperor Yang was not insane. He simply believed that all flesh existed for his pleasure. That is not madness. That is power without conscience, system without soul. The throne is always hollow. It's what fills it that determines whether it becomes a seat of justice or a mechanism of mass rape. Emperor Yang died 1,405 years ago. The systems that enabled him didn't. Think about that.